When I was a kid, I didn't own a Sega Mega Drive. In fact, I've never even owned a Sega system, and the closest I have come to having purchased something related to Sega was a ticket to Sega World in Sydney, back when I was a kid. I did, however, have a very good friend who had a Mega Drive when we were growing up, and we'd often play games like Sonic 3, Wiz and Liz, and Gunstar Heroes, mostly games that you could play together. So it's no surprise that I'd never really played the original Shining Force. Shining Force, The Legacy of Great Intention, was released on the Sega Mega Drive, also known as the Sega Genesis, between 1992 and 1993 across all territories. As I also tended to be the kid that read Nintendo Power, or later the official PlayStation magazine, I'd never even heard of this game or its series until I was older and able to get into emulation. The game is quite accessible these days, however, as it's typically bundled into collections such as within the Sega Mega Drive Classics, which is how I played it on the PS4. I do want to address the elephant in the room before we begin. In a previous video I made about games I had retired, this game was listed as one of them. But you know what? After I put out that video, I thought maybe I should return and see if I was still roadblocked. Lo and behold, all the grinding I had done had made some of my units strong enough to carry the team through the last couple of battles to the end of the game. Big shout out to May, Arthur, and Anri. In any case, if you feel like retiring a game right when you're near the end, that little push could be all you need to get over the finish line. Shining Force, which we will now be referring to the game as The Legacy of Great Intention, is a bit long-winded and a little silly for a title if you ask me, places you into the boots of Max, a child from the kingdom of Guardiana within the lands of Rune. Before we talk too much about him, let's talk a little bit about the legend of the game world. As you start it up, we are shown a scene depicting the history of the world where the Dark Dragon was pushed into exile by a people known only as the Ancients. Sealed and forgotten, the Dark Dragon was lost to the annals of time for almost 1,000 years, and the lands of Rune experienced a lasting peace. Many years later, the people of Runeforest rose up using powerful technology to subjugate the rest of the land. Now, the people of Rune wait in fear, hoping that the foretold hero would emerge and free them. Before we can join the tale, an elven child named Simone beckons to us over an open book, asking us to pore over the ancient tome with her, positing that the Dark Dragon is behind everything and will come back soon. Whilst her function does serve as the title screen, I liked this angle, as she could be recalling your tale or telling you of what has happened in the past, and using this to educate you on how to beat the Dark Dragon. It's not made clear either way, but I liked that it is open to conjecture. Once we have given our character a name, whose default is Max and won't be running up that hill, but will have problems, we awaken within his shoes after a sparring session with his mentor Varius. After finishing the session, the two are interrupted by a messenger that indicates that the king requires Varius' immediate attention. Ever the curious youth, Max heads to the castle with friends in tow to discover the urgency behind the summons. Speaking to the king directly, we learn of the legacy of the people of Guardiana as watchmen over an ancient gate that is currently being threatened by a foreign force. After heading there and defeating a contingency of vile creatures attempting to open it, we learn that this was a distraction that allowed other forces to attack our beloved homeland. Heading back, we discover that we are too late. Our kingdom has been overrun, the king has been mortally wounded, and we witness the death of our mentor Varius. He didn't last very long. With his dying breath, the king bequeaths Max to seek out his daughter in Manarina, and the Shining Force is established as a squad to collectively come together and oppose the atrocities of Runeforest. The story is predictable, which is to be expected of a game of its era. There are no curveballs, and it's a simple tale of light versus darkness, but it serves its purpose in pushing the narrative forward and funneling you toward your next objective. For a Sega Mega Drive game, it was groundbreaking in telling a story within the constraints of a strategy RPG by allowing you as the player to explore the cities between the battle maps, rather than relegating you to selecting options via a menu like Vandal Heartslater did. and tended to be the norm of the genre at the time. Shining Force is broken into chapters and then further divided between two phases, the aforementioned exploration and the battle maps themselves. Whilst I found town exploration to be fun, I didn't like the way the game managed talking to NPCs. You must first stop and open a menu, and then select the option to talk to the person. In some cases, by the time you have done this, the NPC has already taken a step out of earshot, so you need to close the menu and try again. It made a part of the game that should have been easy a little tedious, though it wasn't a fierce detractor. What I did enjoy about the exploration portions was that there were secret characters that you could find and recruit to your cause, and I even missed some of them. The cast roster is quite large, and units that you don't take into battle will not gain experience, so you really need to choose which of the units you'd like to fill the limited 12-person battle roster with. And Max always needs to be in the party, so that reduces the number to 11. If he only could. Whilst in town, you may wish to avail yourself of services such as the general store for curatives or the equipment store to ensure your characters are carrying the most up-to-date arms. Each character in your party can hold on to 4 items, one of which is equipped, or you can equip others if you have rings, for example. And if their inventory is full, you'll need to do a MacGyver juggle to make space to enable them to equip a new weapon. This can be laborious, and takes important playtime away from doing other things like slaying foes. I mean, come on, we're adults. Who has time to be shuffling inventories around? Seriously. Churches are also a popular location to visit, not as a place of worship, but to save your game, remove detrimental conditions, revive fallen allies, and promote those that are of at least level 10. I would recommend patience and waiting until your characters are at least level 20 to optimize status gains, but who am I to tell you how to play? When it comes to combat, your glittering force is placed on a grid and you are not provided the opportunity to choose where each member stands. In some cases, if the enemy is faster than you, this can prove to be disadvantageous, but generally speaking, I didn't have too much of an issue with it. Rather than some titles that permit your entire party to move before the enemy does, you never know when an opponent or your team will take their turn, meaning you need to be constantly on your toes, making sure you aren't putting Max or any of your healers in a position where they will be picked off. You can check the field to see who your opponents are and if there are any chests to be opened, but mostly you'll be moving your units into position ready to assault the enemy. Should you take a unit near an enemy unit, you'll be presented with the option to attack. Executing combat activates an alternate scene showing a character's battle prowess through more detailed animations, which I thought was a nice touch. Each character tended to have a unique animation, especially Blue and Kylo, so when using a new spell or character, I always anticipated what would occur. When casting magic, you cannot select the ground as the target, as the spell will always center on an enemy, and you may choose at which level you wish to cast it if you have learned stronger versions of it that will then change its range or potency. This made managing MP more strategic. Did I want to dump all of my MP into taking out the Forerunners, or did I want to save it to slug the boss with powerful feats of the elements? Experience is gained for almost every action taken, though the most is granted from defeating an enemy or dealing a lot of damage. Healers, unfortunately, get the short end of the rod, gaining only about 10 experience per heal, meaning that unless you are constantly unloading their support spells, they are going to be trailing far behind the rest of the party. For a character to level up, they need to reach 100 experience, which is easier for some than others. Should Max die in combat, and he will as he tends to get targeted the most, you'll be returned to the last church you visited with some of your money gone. I guess Runeforce and its allies are a bit hard on cash and mug you before you're able to escape, or perhaps the kind vicars of the church decide to garnish your wages. Whichever the case, I don't think it's fair. If you happen to get stuck in a battle and know you're not going to win it, Max also has a spell called Egress that teleports the entire Shining Force to safety, preserving your finances. As it can take a lot of grinding to get your units to a sufficient level to deal with some of the later bosses, particularly those that seem to get free heals between turns, you will be repeating the same battle maps over and over. And this is what had originally bored me and caused me to retire the game. Good thing I came back to finish it years later, hey. As I mentioned earlier, the members that can join the Shining Force are many and varied. In addition to the standard fantasy races of humans, elves and dwarves, you can also get centaurs, a lycanthrope, birdmen, a dragon, and even a robot. I liked the variety and did a little bit of experimenting before I decided on the solid cast that took me through the rest of the game. The other thing that stands out to me in Shining Force besides the cast is the setting. Where you begin with high fantasy, as you move further into the plot, you start to get more sci-fi elements, which becomes evident in some of the foes you face, as well as the design of some of the later kingdoms. You'll find pipes and gears hidden beneath the facade of stone and masonry, hinting that the ancients were far more advanced than the current state of the world, which made me interested to know more about Rune and its lore. Sadly, within the game you don't really get much of an explanation, other than what is shown on the screen, though I guess it's to be expected of a game of its era. Now, I did want to take a moment to draw your attention to the cover of the game in the West, which differs dramatically from the original depiction, where in Japan the cover shows members of the Shining Force battling a foe off-screen in the foreground. The Western case has a castle looming in the distance as a man in the foreground staves off the assault of two skeletons. He stands firm in a green tunic that leaves nothing to the imagination, showing that he definitely doesn't skip leg day, and perhaps would get a little chill come on if the wind happened to blow at the wrong time, at the wrong angle, in the wrong direction. But heck, maybe it's for aerodynamic reasons when he uses the spell Aggress. Maybe he wants to make sure the transient winds support him well in his flight to safety. Gotta keep those jewels vibrant and virile. Jokes aside, I always find it amusing that the West tended to get box art that seemed designed to fit Western perceived sensibilities. I mean, as a kid, the original box art definitely would not have prevented me from picking up the game, but maybe it would have for some. I'd be keen to hear your thoughts about this phenomenon in the comments, so let me know. Looking at the graphics for a 1992 Mega Drive game, I think they hold up surprisingly well. The sprites are colourful and full of personality, especially during battle where you get those close-ups of them swinging a weapon or slinging a spell. The towns and battle maps have decent variety too, with some of the kingdoms having futuristic mechanisms hidden within their walls. It was a nice contrast. Overall, it's not the most detailed stuff that you can see on the system, but everything feels clean, vibrant, and charming in that classic 16-bit way. I also like the portraits of each of the characters that you can see in the menus, and the UI with its little animated boxes indicating the actions that you can take, which were a nice touch. As for the music, it's composed by Masahiko Yoshimura and definitely has a very distinct Mega Drive sound. A lot of the tracks have this droning, atmospheric quality to them that I can't really say I'm a big fan of. It can feel a bit repetitive after a while, but is a mark of its era. The battle music picks up with peppy beats and a frenetic pace to it whenever you attack an opponent, or they attack you, but this too gets old after a while. I can honestly say that nothing really grabbed my attention overall, which is a shame. I did, however, like the sound that plays over dialogue as it progresses within the text box. Games that went this angle to emulate the sound of someone speaking really hits that nostalgia button within me, and I can't help but appreciate what it's attempting to achieve. Overall, Shining Force is a game that grew on me when I took the time to digest and understand it. We started off on rocky terms, and I broke up with it over its incessant necessity for grinding, but then came back and we made good in the end. The inventory juggling and clunky NPC dialogue triggers can test your patience, the music didn't click for me, and the story is as straightforward as they come for a 1992 RPG. Despite this, I still kinda dig it. The battles are engaging and tense because you never quite know what's going to happen next. The battle animations still look great, and that big roster of characters travelling together in camaraderie is a setting that's after my own heart. If you've got a soft spot for classical tactical games, or are just curious about Sega's earlier RPG efforts, you should definitely give it a go for yourself. By the way, are there any games on the Sega Mega Drive that you vibe with and think that I should try? Let me know in the comments. This has been Venoix with a review of Shining Force, The Legacy of Great Intention for the Sega Mega Drive/Genesis. If you enjoyed this review, please like and subscribe for more great RPG content. As always, thank you for watching my videos. I appreciate you. Take care of yourselves, and bye bye for now.